afternoon, Whale Fam and the entire metaverse. Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. I'm very excited. Today, we are doing a project showcase on the Pixelated project with SaveArtSpace and G Money NFT. And he is joining us today, which we are super appreciative of because nothing like hearing about the project from the guy who has curated the whole thing. G Money, thank you so much for joining today. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm doing well, thank you. And I love your avatar. So you've actually turned a punk into a live avatar, and that is amazing.
Yeah, actually, this was done by the guys Crypto00se and a couple of guys over there. You know, they said they wanted me to make one of these for me, and they gave it to me. We actually did a show unveiling maybe a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, and I've been using it in my video conferences since then. I love it.
And you've even got the laser eyes. I love it. I think that's like the perfect touch for the space these days.
For sure.
Taking it to the next level. So to start out today, I think that it would be really interesting to see what, maybe you could give us a little background about how you got into crypto and then like how you first learned about punk. Like what's your story? What's the origin for G Money here?
All right, cool. Yeah. So, I come from traditional finance, been a long short US equities trader for a while now. And I originally got into crypto. I found out about Bitcoin really early. It was at $27, I remember. And I remember it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd been reading a bunch about it. And this was probably in like 2010 or something. And I was like, oh, I'll wait for it. I'll wait to buy it. And like, it never pulled back. And it went straight up to 1,000. Then it pulled back to 200 and I was like, oh, like that was over. Like I missed it. And then I didn't look at it for like a bunch of years until maybe or spring of 2017. And like around April is when Bitcoin was finally getting back above 1,000. I was like, wow, I'm like, there's got to be something there. If like this thing came all the way back to 1,000 and it's starting to get above there. And I started doing a deep dive on Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I got involved with like let's say the mid to back half of the ICO boom in 2017 and 2018. And then what happened was in Q1 of 2018, I was like, Bitcoin blockchain technology is great. It's going to change the world. But using the .com bubble as my parallel, I was like, it's going to be like, 5 to 7 years before they really build something cool, right? Some really useful tech. And so I sold anything that I had that was liquid. And I was like, I'll be back, in a couple of years. And what happened was the way I came back was in early summer of 2020 last year. Some of the projects that I had invested in were unlocking. And so, I had to give them like my information of where to send tokens to and stuff like that. And so then I started looking at a bunch of projects and stuff. I'm like, all right, let's see what got built out there. And, I started messing with like these different protocols like Aave and synthetics and all these cool things that were popping up over the summer. And I was like, oh my God, like they built something and like it was way faster than I thought it would happen. And I went down, DeFi summer, and I was really, really involved in that and getting back into the space. And then it wasn't until the fall, I had heard about CryptoPunks and I heard about NFTs during the summer, but I just wasn't concerned with it at all just because I was so focused on DeFi. And then it wasn't until the fall when DeFi died down a little bit that I finally was able to sit down and really look into NFTs. And the way I really got involved in NFTs was there was a CryptoKitty shard for a Gen Zero founder on Niftex, and someone was shilling it on Twitter saying it was an easy like 2 or 3x from there. And I'm like, all right, cool. Like I like 2 or 3x my money. So I bought a bunch of shards and I thought I was going to make like 2 or 3x in a week. And it traded down 50% right away. And I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm like, what do I do? I can either sell it all and like, sell it for a huge loss, or I could buy everybody else out. Like I actually did some DD this time. And I was like, all right, I can maybe buy it at what I could either, I was okay with either getting bought out and getting my money back or buying people out at the original cost, and then trying to sell it for an extra like 5 to 10 ETH or whatever. And so I placed a bid to buy everybody else out at 52, I believe it was 52 ETH. And at the time, ETH was around $500. So it was around $25,000 at the time. And during the buyout period, I found NiftyFi. And on NiftyFi, you can post an NFT as collateral. So I was like, all right, so instead of selling it, because I was bullish on Ethereum, and in turn, that made me bullish on NFTs, because I view NFTs as upside options on Ethereum. I was like, I'll see if I can get a loan for at least half the principal, right? If I got a loan for like 12,000 or 25 ETH, I would be okay with that, because I was able to keep the NFT as well. So within a few days, I got an offer for 50 ETH, and I asked the guy for the loan in DAI. So he gave me the loan, $25,000 in DAI, and at that point, I took the DAI and I went long ETH at around like $600, I think, at this point. And I kept the crypto kitty and I went long ETH. And that's where I was like, I just had like a huge aha moment, right? Because like at that point was when I was like, this is a humongous ecosystem, right? Because it was at that moment was when like two things connected for me. First was obviously this system that was building around NFTs and things that are non-fungible. But two, and I guess more importantly, and what helped me understand NFTs a little quicker and easier, was if I take a second to rewind back to the first day of quarantine last year, where I bought a PlayStation, and I hadn't played a video game in over 10 years. And I bought a PlayStation, I download Fortnite, I start playing Fortnite with my friends and their nephews. And, I'm playing with these 10 or 12-year-old kids. And the first thing that they ask me is, what skins do you have? And I'm like, what skins do I have? Do they give me any special powers? They say no. So I'm like, that's stupid. I'm not buying any skins. Fast forward 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm buying like all, if I'm kind of into the skin, I'm buying it all, right? And at that point, I realized that there was just going to be this massive super cycle for the next, at least 10, probably for the rest of my life, of people going more digital, right? Because even though maybe people over the age of 30, 40 obviously have trouble understanding digital ownership, if you talk to any 10-year-old that's played Roblox or Minecraft or pretty much any digital game, and you discuss digital ownership to them, they totally understand it. So when those two things combined for me, and I had that aha moment, I was like, wow, like I really need to go down the rabbit hole on NFTs, and I did. And at that point, I started looking at like, Squiggly WTF by Nate Alex, Art Blocks, Chromie Squiggles, and all these different projects. And as I was spending more and more time on Discord, people were like, oh, you need a punk. And I'm like, no, like punks are expensive. At the time, they were, I think floor punks were maybe like $1,500, maybe 2,000. And I was like, I don't want a punk. I want to find the next punk. But as I spent more time in Discord and on Twitter, I realized that some of like the most OG people in the space, the people that knew the most, the people that understood the market the best, that were the most helpful, they generally had punks as their avatars. And that's when like it clicked, and interacting with the members of the community, and they were taking their time to like help me understand it. I was like, wow, I'm like, punks, like your profile picture is your skin in Twitter, Discord, and Telegram. So if in the same way, like in a game, maybe I want to portray myself a certain way in a certain game, that's the way I would do it in Twitter and in Discord. And as an example is, there've been plenty of times when I've played Fortnite, and where I'm going up against somebody that I'm gonna like try to kill, and then I realize that they have like a really old skin, which means that they've been playing for a long time, which means they're more likely than not better than me. So I'm just like, oh man, like I'm about to die. Maybe I try to run the other way or try to escape or whatever. So it's like, it's just really when I realized and I put those things together, I was like, it just made natural sense for me that punks are it, right? Like, and I became like red pilled on punks, and I went down that punk rabbit hole since then, right? And I've been a huge champion for punks since then. So that's kind of like how I guess I ended up here. Yeah.
That is a fabulous story. And I like the part of your story, as funny as it is, like, I think everybody's crypto origin story at some point crosses paths with CryptoKitties. And like then then you get into punks, and that's where, as you mentioned, people are using these as their avatars. And sure, like some people maybe are just throwing them on without actually owning them, because that's the downside. But having that value of actually owning the asset, unlike the video games, which is something that traditionally people understand. If you're playing video games and you're working and grinding and earning the whatever currency you need to get the skins, like you want some guarantee that that's only going to be yours. Other people can't take it from you.
Right. Exactly.
So with the punks here, now you've taken this punk, you got in, and have turned that into your, online persona. So you've got it on Twitter, you've got in Discord. Here you've even got this, animated model for when you're doing any sort of interviews, which is amazing, because like you are most definitely that punk personified now.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun. I think the NFT community has been like a super positive one, and that's kind of what I really liked about it. People were always welcoming, and it's been like a great experience overall.
And that's really interesting too, because you said you came from like traditional finance. And have you found in the NFT space, is it more accessible? Like obviously it's like drinking from a fire hose. But in terms of learning and finding resources, how does it compare to traditional finance, since there are a lot of overlaps in the content itself?
So I will say that it's different in the sense that like the places you get, just like crypto, right? In general, the places where you get your research from are very different, right? So it's like when I talk to people outside of crypto, or generally anybody over the age of 30, and I'm like, I'm on Discord and Telegram all day long, they're like, sometimes like, what's that, right? Like they don't know what they are, and it's like, it's the same information for the most part, right? Because people are making decisions based on information all the time, but it just the source of that information is different, right? It's not like CNBC.com. It's different Discords, it's different Twitch streams and YouTube channels and chats and all these things. But like I just think in general the way people will make decisions based on the same types of information, but like the way people access that information is what's really changing, I think.
I would agree. I think that, not only is the ownership and even like the platforms for these assets and, the finance becoming more decentralized, but so is the knowledge, and where you're getting that.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's crazy because I mean, you kind of saw it a little bit with like Wall Street Bets, where, you had your small common investor now having access to the same resources that like your traditional hedge funds do. And all of a sudden, like, cool things can happen, right? And I feel like the same thing is happening in crypto on a broader sense, right? And when I take a look at my involvement in crypto compared to my involvement in equities, and I think the thing that really excites me about crypto more so than anything is kind of like your impact that you can have. And it doesn't necessarily, like, you don't have to be a millionaire or a billionaire to be able to have a say in a protocol, right? Like I could own $100 million worth of Tesla stock, I'd still never be able to talk to Elon Musk. But I can own I could not even own a token, or I can own one token, and I can sign into a Discord and I can talk to a founder and be like, hey, like I think you're doing this wrong, and I think you should look at the problem from this angle. And you can have like an intelligent discussion with that person, right? And this is in like for the impact that you can have, like to me that's amazing, right? To be able to have some sort of say, whether it's significant or insignificant, in how a protocol that might be used by millions of people at some point down the road, if it gains enough scale, and you could have some sort of input into that to me is like super awesome, and like super like just that the optimism that comes from that, to me is amazing.
I would agree, that's definitely amazing, having that level of accessibility. It's broken down a lot of barriers. and also made it so, as you mentioned, you can share your ideas. And a lot of times within organizations, you end up with groupthink, so you're not really getting any of those fresh ideas. But now, because the platforms are so open, you're able to get, as a founder, a lot of feedback from a lot of people who have entirely different viewpoints and, can see a problem from a different angle.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
that's a really awesome thing about the space. And I like how, everybody really is, open and accessible to it, kind of regardless of the level, as you mentioned, or, with their wealth level, people are still interacting and treating each other as individuals, which is really nice to see. That's refreshing.
Yeah, I agree. 1,000% love that.
So with, especially the last year, because I know that you mentioned that you really got into kind of looking into punks in the fall. And I think it's really interesting with the way the pandemic worked, because suddenly everybody had to reformat how they're getting their social interaction. There's no more in-person gatherings. There's not, Friday night heading out, doing anything. So a lot of people have actually turned inward to the metaverse and kind of found more Discord communities or any of the in-game communities, and that's where they're spending more time, which I think has had a pretty significant impact on the NFT adoption as well. What are your thoughts on that? And especially given that's kind of the same time frame that you were jumping into, the punk pool as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I totally 100% agree with your comment, right? I remember, I'm single, I live alone, and I remember my parents were like, they were like nervous that I was just being too isolated or something during the beginning of the pandemic. And I told them, I'm like, I'm playing video games with like two of my best friends that are on the other side of the world pretty much every day. And like we're interacting on headsets and we're talking to each other. And I was like, this is the most social I've been with them in like forever, right? Because we haven't been in the same city. And it's crazy because it's like, even though we're behind a screen and we're in a different kind of metaverse, right? Even I'd make a really strong argument that, Twitter and Discord and Telegram, that's a metaverse already, right? Like, because we're interacting with other people, we're forming relationships in these small little worlds, even though they're not digital pictures or moving objects yet, but there is communities that are getting built in them. And I was like, I felt that connection with people, even though I wasn't necessarily spending time in public with those people, right? Like those connections were being forged. So to me, like that to me just kind of proved like the whole point of it, right? Like the whole point of like connection, and like that to me is like the really human element of of just people connecting, and that's happening in the metaverse, right?
I agree. I say my parents actually had the same concern for the same reasons, but I was like, no, like, let me show you this blossoming environment where there are so many awesome people. And, it really, I would agree that I've been more social, in the last year than I think I ever have been. And, even if the events that I'm attending are all, online and distributed, like we're still interacting and having conversations and like sharing experiences. And that's the thing that counts. And so I think that, we'll have some really interesting impacts moving forward too. As you mentioned, like, having the youth getting into games, like they understand the digital ownership. They also understand connecting, through these mediated channels. So now, it's a very natural thing.
Yeah, I agree.
And that is exciting for sure. So tell me though, because that gets us into how this digital space and hype has moved into the real world, because there most definitely has been some overlap from the digital space to the real world with the Pixelated project and SaveArtSpace. Do you want to tell us about that? Because this is really exciting.
Yeah, so basically, Pixelated is a public exhibition of 96 punks that will be showcased throughout the city of Miami on billboards and bus stop shelters for at least a month, if not longer. And basically what the goal of it was to kind of like just bring punks to the real world, right? It was kind of like to your point that we just discussed, is like as more people their lives became more digital and they spent more time online, these different identities, whether it was punks or whatever avatar somebody chose, was something that people would have to represent themselves in the world. It just so happens that the punk community was really good. I was embraced by the punk community, and I loved what I saw and the way people would help each other and everything. And that's why I went down the rabbit hole with punks. But what ended up happening was I was Justin Aversano is one of the founders, one of the co-founders of SaveArtSpace. And he told me, he was like, hey, listen, like, the mission of my nonprofit is to put art in public places for public consumption, and I would love to get punks up on these billboards and display them to the real world and kind of like merge the two, right, the digital realm and the physical realm, because ultimately we are all human living a human experience, right? Whether it's behind a computer screen or face to face, that emotion and those bonds are real.
They absolutely are. And so this exhibition, as you mentioned, is pulling punks from the digital space and actually plopping them down in Miami. And they're going to be, you said, on billboard ad spaces and bus shelters. Yeah. And there's actually on the SaveArtSpace site a map of all of the different places where the punks are going to be.
Yep. So they're going to be all over the city. It's super exciting. They're going up today. It was it was raining pretty hard today, so I'm not sure if they'll be up all today, but definitely within the next day or two. And the thing that I really liked about the project too was because people are always hitting me up and like, hey, like I want to do something with NFTs. What do you think I should do? And I always tell people you can be as creative as you want, right? And so like the cool thing that I think about this, above anything else, really, is that it's a new way to raise money for his nonprofit, right? So what we did was I went out and I raised almost $100,000 from punk owners to have their punks featured. So the billboard space was originally by donations of all the punk owners that are featured in the actual exhibition. And so what we're doing is we're making collectibles. We're making 25 collectibles for each billboard and or bus stop. And so what those are is, of those 25, 5 of them will be given out for free to the first people that take a picture and retweet us. And then the other 20 will be sold for 0.1 ETH. And that money is going directly to the nonprofit. And so that's creating another revenue stream for the nonprofit, which for me is pretty exciting, because like you're kind of taking NFTs and it's not just like your typical, hey, auction for this cause. It's a different way of like, hey, like this is this nonprofit, this is how they're trying to create another revenue stream for themselves. And then obviously if there's trading on the collectibles down the road, they will get a percentage of revenues from each residual sale after that. So like to me, that part was just as interesting as getting the punks up on the billboards, because it's like a new and innovative way to use NFTs, right? Because it's like, it's not just for art, right? Because the one thing I try to tell people is that NFTs are literally everything in the world. So when you realize that like you're not limited by pretty much anything, you can try to get as creative as you want with them.
So in this case, this is one of the more creative things I think I've seen, just because they're going to be in the real world. So usually on, bus shelters and billboards, and like we're used to seeing humans, and so now you've got these punks, which are, kind of distinctly human shaped, but most definitely digital. And having that, juxtaposed with the real world around it is a really interesting feeling. Is that, when you were planning this, Is there anything on these billboards that will lead people to punks and the metaverse, or is it simply the image and we will,
So,
they'll have to fill in the blanks?
oh, so no, so that's a great question. So what on the bus shelters, there's a QR code that will take you to the Pixelated website, and on the billboards, it's just the SaveArtSpace.org website. We wanted to put a QR code on there as well, but because of traffic laws and safety laws, we couldn't because they didn't want people driving and taking their phones out to take a picture. So but that, as well as we weren't allowed to put cigarettes on any of the displays, so we had to edit out the actual cigarettes themselves just because of advertising laws in the states. But in the collectibles itself, it's the punk in its original form.
So the punks were also subject to the laws of the humans.
Exactly.
Oh, I don't think they're very pleased about that. Probably they're too punk for this, but it's okay because now, and I think that does make sense about not having QR codes on moving things for safety reasons. We don't want, negative interactions with getting
Exactly.
people into punks. But with this, and there were 96 punks that have been featured, and those were people that had helped sponsor the project itself. What is the after this exhibition takes place and has concluded, is this something that you think would be expanded another time to include more punks or even other NFTs? Is that something you're going to be looking at and analyzing for future opportunities?
Yeah. So basically, because of the success and the reception that we've gotten already, we are going to be doing New York next month, and it will be opened up to even more punks to do it. But yeah, we're basically wanted to coincide with the sale of Christie's, the Christie's auction, and kind of like, punks just took over Miami, and we're about to invade New York as well next month, and then possibly other cities from there. We're discussing it, the possibilities, but we're not committing to anything just yet.
And that is a crazy thing, that punks are going to be auctioned at Christie's.
Yeah.
Did I see on your Twitter you had kind of predicted this a while back?
I mean, I've been calling for a lot of punk things happening. Like I remember when I first bought my ape, I was like, oh, this is going to be the first CryptoPunk sold at Christie's or Sotheby's, and I thought it would take like 2 or 3 years before they would put up for auction at an auction house, and the fact that it happened within 90 days is pretty crazy.
That is a super fast turnaround for sure. And the fact that, you've got all of this happening with punks, like they're making such a big wave, such big waves, both in the metaverse and in the real world now. And we've got them, people will be able to go walk around Miami and kind of find the punks. You can have like the Where's Waldo.
Yeah,
Where's
that's kind of what it's like. So,
and it'll be hard for some, if they're moving too. So
yeah, and I think the cool thing about the punk community too is a couple punks hit me up yesterday, wanted to sponsor their own extra little like treasure hunt, and I was like, sure, like I'll sign up, like, because, and I think that's the beauty of like crypto in general, is like the open sourceness of it, where it's like, hey, like, you want to do something cool too, sure, like do it, like let the whole point is like to just get the word of mouth out there, and it's not like, oh, this is the way the project's supposed to run, or like this is how it's supposed to be, right? It's like, hey, if you have a cool idea and you want to implement it, and there's other people that want to do it, like, more power to you, right? Like, let's all have fun and let's all do this together.
And that collaboration really does, set the tone for having a very strong community experience.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. And then like the moving forward to New York as well. And people are able to win NFTs by posting pictures. So here's an NFT generating another NFT.
Yeah, and that those NFTs are also like they're like they are objects in Decentraland. I'm not sure if it's CryptoVoxels either, but definitely in Decentraland. So it's like you can that NFT you can actually post it on like a piece of land in DCL.
Nice. So then it will pull the real world back into the digital.
Exactly.
What a fun circle of events. I like that. So then you've got coming up next month, you said we're going to New York and we've got the Christie's auction. What other potential either plans or wish list items do you see for crypto and the NFTs in the next year or so?
I mean, I just think NFTs in general are just going to be going more and more mainstream. And, I think first we're looking at art and collectibles, which is what we're seeing right now. But I think people are just going to realize that, as you realize everything's an NFT, like you will just see more and more creative ways to use NFTs, to kind of to show NFTs. Like I just think that like we're at the beginning of some amazing stuff, and I'm really excited to be part of this and the movement that's happening, and like this is some of the most exciting stuff that I've done, like if not ever, maybe definitely in the last 10 years.
Definitely. I would say there's never a dull day in the metaverse. You wake up and you're like, what adventures are we having today? For
Exactly.
Sure.
Exactly.
I feel that too. I actually made the transition last month full time to the crypto space. So
nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's now every day is like this, and there's still so much to discover, which is really, really exciting. We had a question in the chat asking what you think about other, pixel art NFT projects, and I would expand that to be obviously the focus here is punks right now, but do you, what are you looking at for the potential of other projects as well?
So I mean, my wallet's pretty public, so I assume people can just see what I like for the most part. But like, when I'm looking at pixel art or just any projects in general, is like I'm buying something that I like. Like, I for instance, like I think I bought the Nyan Cat punks like last week. And that was basically because like it made me laugh, and I was like, "Oh, these are funny." Like I'm not necessarily buying them to make money on them or to flip them or whatever. But like I think all these derivative punk accounts to me just strengthens the case for punks, right? Because if punks weren't so iconic, then you wouldn't be having all these clone projects or copycat projects coming up. So to me, like anything that I'm generally putting into any of these clone projects it's like, oh, it's because I find it enjoyable either on some level, either it makes me laugh or I find it aesthetically pleasing, but I'm not necessarily going out and being like, hey, like, I like, for me, the story with punks is that, if I were to look 50 years into the future, I think there's a really, really high chance, almost certain, that CryptoPunks would be in the digital art wing of any major museum 50 years from now, if there is going to be a digital art wing, right? So if there is, punks will be in there. And that's, to me, like, that's all you need to know if you're trying to buy punks from a collector's point of view for a long-term asset to hold.
Well, that brings in, I guess, my next question then, because you mentioned digital art wings, but do you think that the big art hubs and like these museums that are very well known may end up simply creating fully digital versions of themselves? So it's not even a digital art wing, it's simply a whole digital environment.
Oh yeah, for sure. I totally think that will happen. But I think you'll probably have a mixture of both, right? You'll probably have like the MoMA would have obviously its physical location in New York City, but then it will probably at some point also have a digital location in a metaverse that it could either be totally different, in the sense that like it could be like a different location, or it could just be an exact replica, so that you don't need to be in New York City to experience the art.
It's a very interesting line of thought. Like, there's so much potential.
Exactly. Which is what makes it so incredible, right?
It really, like, it's just endless potential, which is mind blowing some days, That's exciting though. And having, the first of the non-fungible tokens here, with the punks, and I've got the article up about, having them auctioned at Christie's with, Larva Labs collection, and like that's a crazy big thing, having that sort of notoriety that they're getting auctioned. And then people are going to be seeing this, article who maybe aren't familiar at all with the crypto space, but they're seeing, from the art world, and then they walk outside in New York or in Miami and see the thing that is being advertised, for the Christie's auction.
Yeah, I mean it's super exciting, and it's interesting because like, we are so deep in NFTs that to us like punks are like, punks are punks. Everybody knows what a punk is in NFTs. But when you talk to people that might not even be in crypto, and now like, when I talk to like random friends that I haven't spoken to in a while, and they mention like not only just NFTs, but maybe like CryptoPunks, I'm like, oh wow. I'm like, punks are starting to enter like the mainstream, right? Like I don't think we're totally there yet, but I also thought that it would take us at least 12 to 18 months to get to the point we're at now, right? So, it's definitely happening way faster, and it's definitely an exciting time for sure.
It really is. And, it's interesting because, you mentioned having, your friends bringing up punks, and like that's the feeling of the mainstream. Like my dad has actually been keeping an eye on the whale token every morning when he wakes up and checks stocks now. So, like that's a weird thing because my dad is like 60 years old, and here he is like trying to learn about the crypto space.
Yeah, no, it's really fun. It's great.
It's interesting to see how, it's definitely not by any means restricted to a single demographic or generation. And now we've got the billboards. And so is this on the screen here an example of how the billboards will look?
Yep. Each billboard is each one's different colors, and obviously different punks. And so like you see that one right there with the if you go back, so you see like that the gray to the woman's right, yeah. So that's like supposed to be the cigarette there. So that
Right.
will be the sign on the physical part that's a cigarette punk.
Interesting. So some slight edits, and then look at this one. I like her.
Yeah.
These are very fascinating. And those very bright eyes, and yet another cigarette.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah. So we've got the selection of billboards at the SaveArtSpace. And how many articles? I was able to find 3 articles actually about this initiative that you're organizing.
I think there were 3. I imagine there'll probably be a bunch more once the billboards start going up, and I guess more mainstream press is like, what's going on over here. But yeah, I mean the Hypebeast article I thought was really cool, just because I know a lot of people read Hypebeast, and it's kind of like they're almost like a commentary on what's going mainstream and stuff like that. So I was pretty happy that Hypebeast picked it up, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a really good article. I like it too because it's a very concise explanation of what's happening, and how this is going to essentially kind of tie in the different communities. And then we've also got the Decrypt article, which is a little bit more spicy.
Yeah.
But eye-catching for sure. That's definitely one of those like see the title, want to read the thing.
Exactly.
So, in this case, we don't even need museums. Like, we're just putting the punks out in the world.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing, right? And that's the point of Justin's nonprofit, right? Is to put art out in places for people to see, right? Because so often, especially, and I think this is like the cool thing about like NFT art is physical art some of the best pieces in the world and most coveted pieces are put into vaults and not shown to people to view, right? But the cool thing about like digital art is like you can have like an installation and you can show, multi-million dollar pieces from a screen, and anybody with a screen and access to the internet anywhere in the world can see it, right? And that's the beautiful thing about it.
That is amazing because it's no longer the, even though perhaps the ownership allows for some elitism or, that higher tier collecting, you can't hide it away any longer. So everybody gets to experience it.
Exactly.
That's a beautiful thing. It really is. So it says these are going to be for a month, and also it has a whole, in this article, kind of goes into what NFTs are, which I thought was really, interesting, and having all of the different values of where punks have sold, because in the Pixelated website, you had actually for a time held the record for highest purchase, right?
Yeah, it was actually only for like a week. A week later, actually the first alien that sold in like forever was bought by Flamingo DAO a week later, which was it was good. It was validation of my theory and my thesis and stuff like that. So it was good, and I feel like my buy and the Flamingo buy really helped spark a lot of the run. Granted, I think NFTs in general ran, but I think it sparked the run in CryptoPunks in general, where you started seeing them start to fly and trade to where they are now today, which is significantly higher than where it was when we bought them.
Right. And that makes sense because, as you're buying in, you're putting this, amount of money into a single asset, and you're like, well, like, at that point, you're like, I really, in a sense, like, I like the things I'm buying, but also I hope that the value, is retained. And so when additional collectors start purchasing, similar or higher prices, it sort of, as you mentioned, reinforces your decision, that you're not the only one doing the thing. So
Yeah. No,
yeah,
well, it's also funny because the day I bought my ape also coincided with, I think, the short term high in Bitcoin, where Bitcoin went from like 40 to 30,000, I think it was, or 30 to 20,000. I don't really remember, but it was like a short term high for like a week or two. And as with any like trading or decision making, right? You're like, oh man, did I just buy the top? Right. So, I was questioning myself and whether I made a mistake or something, and was nervously watching for a little bit. But once I saw that the like Flamingo, because Flamingo, I have since joined Flamingo since then, but there's about 60 or 70 members within the DAO. So it wasn't just like one person being like, yeah, like I'm gonna spend $700,000 on a CryptoPunk. It was 30 to 40 people that had to agree with it at least. And I was like, okay, like that was like some good, it made me feel better about the buy.
that absolutely makes sense. One of those do your own research, but also take into consideration what other people are doing to some extent.
Exactly.
So we have a question in the Discord chat that wants to know, for people that missed the CryptoPunk train, which at this point, it's a very steep entry, how can they engage with the punk community beyond these exhibits that you're running? What would you recommend?
Of how to engage with the punk community. Well, I think the easiest way to engage with the punk community is obviously to just go into the Larva Labs Discord. That's like, I'd say, town square for punks. That to me is like the best way, and just even if you don't own a punk, like some most punk collectors like collect other things as well, right? So I know everybody is looking at like new NFTs as they come out, and trying to find stuff that they like and be early and stuff like that. So like to me, like the best way to interact with the community is to just go onto the Discord and like have conversations with people on there.
That is good advice. I like that, mostly because I'm really big on getting involved in all the communities you possibly can.
Yeah. I mean, you
Network.
must be in like 100 different Discord servers then, I assume.
Yes, I'm at the max, and every time I want to join a new one, I have to determine which one I transfer to my alt Discord account. I have to have 2 Discord accounts to hold them all. So, yeah, that's a thing. But, the FOMO is real. I don't want to miss out, know what's going on in this space.
Exactly.
So we are at this point getting close to the hour mark. G Money, is there anything that I have not yet asked you today that you were like super excited about sharing with everybody? And
No, I mean that I just wanted to come on here to just get the word out about the Punks billboards, and if anybody's in the Miami area, to definitely check them out. Take a picture, tag us, retweet, all that stuff. Just to get it out there. Like I think this is really fun. This has been really fun to do. The reception from everyone has been really good. Now excited to bring it to New York next, and it's going to be, I think it's going to be really cool and really fun. And hopefully the reception there is good too. And maybe we do a couple more cities after that.
take a selfie with the punks and try to imitate their faces.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be great.
Bonus points on Twitter for that. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure being able to chat with you about the CryptoPunks and, them invading Miami and next New York. So that is a really awesome thing. And the SaveArtSpace project as well. It's nice to see these installations going up where people are able to experience them.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for having me. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much to the whale community as well for hanging out. It looks like we've got quite a few people in the Discord and also on Twitch watching as we're streaming the Twitch into the Discord. So thank you all for hanging out, and definitely if you are interested in looking into this, check out the Discord, the Punk Larva Labs Discord that G Money mentioned, the social medias, and the articles that we've linked in the chat throughout the night. And we will end the stream here, but thank you all so much. Have a great night.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.